Behind the scenes today is my colleague, Marty Benson, who will be chatting out info for you at a few points today. And she will be able to answer the chat, and she'll be helping assist with Q&A later on. Thank you, Marty. As Executive Director Pratt said, welcome to our second event in the Climate Change and Environmental Review Pilot Speaker Series. Today, you will receive an overview of the Minnesota Infrastructure Carbon Estimator tool. And at the end of the presentation, as time allows, we will open it up for questions, but if you are a cohort member, please feel free to save your questions for the 11 o'clock cohort meeting. Also, just a reminder that we are recording today's session, and we will be posting the meeting materials online on the EQB website. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, through 2022, EQB will be holding speaker series events, cohort meetings, and distributing surveys in support of the Climate Change and Environmental Review Pilot. So stay tuned for April, where we will have a presentation from Amelia Voss from the Minnesota Center of Environmental Advocacy about how people understand environmental review information. And also, if you have any suggestions for future events or topics, please let us know. Marty will throw my email address into the chat, so please feel free to reach out with your ideas. So now I'm going to turn screen sharing over to our speakers and introduce them. Today we have Peter Wasko, Unit Chief of the Modeling and Testing Unit at the Minnesota Department of Transportation's Office of Environmental Stewardship, and Jeff Houk of Morrison Environmental Consulting. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, I want to give a walkthrough today of Minnesota DOT's greenhouse gas analysis requirements for MnDOT projects, and also the overview of the Minnesota Carbon Infrastructure Estimator. I'm going to provide an overview of both the guidance and MICE. Then we're going to walk through an example analysis to show how the tool is used, and close with some resources that are available for more information. MnDOT issued greenhouse gas analysis guidance at the beginning of 2020. Greenhouse gases from motor vehicles are the largest contributor to climate change in both the United States and Minnesota. Greenhouse gases that we're concerned about from a transportation standpoint are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and air conditioning gases. There are other greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change, but they're from industrial sources, not from motor vehicles. So these are the four big gases that we care about from a motor vehicle standpoint. As part of MnDOT's overall efforts to reduce emissions and meet its goals in the statewide transportation plan, they're beginning to assess greenhouse gas emissions from projects. The current version of MnDOT's guidance was released on January 25th, and there's a link to it here. The MnDOT energy guidance was also updated to account for the availability for the MICE tool. If you're doing an environmental impact statement, you're required to look at energy, and you can use the MICE tool for that as well. The guidance is designed to help both MnDOT and the public understand the extent of greenhouse gas emissions from projects, and to possibly identify new ways to reduce those emissions in the future. The greenhouse gas analysis requirement isn't a pass-fail test. It's just for disclosure purposes. Likewise, it's not a decision criteria for choosing a preferred alternative when you're looking at multiple project alternatives. The analysis is required for CADX or CE, EA and EAW, and EAS projects, including both state-only projects and federal projects. but it's not required for projects where an early notification summary memo is the only required environmental document. It's not required for smaller projects with a total construction cost of less than $1 million. And finally, it's not required for projects that aren't covered by the infrastructure carbon estimator tool, which I'll go through in a little while. If there's no way to analyze emissions for those projects, then the analysis is not required. The guidance also includes examples for documentation, including template language to describe the impacts of different types of projects, along with template tables to fill in, and the MICE tool generates the estimates that go into these tables. So that's all I wanted to cover about the guidance. As I said, it's available online if you want to read more about it. Moving on to the MICE tool, here's a screenshot of the project inputs page and also a screenshot of the user guide that's available. MICE was developed back in ICE was developed back in 2014 by the Federal Highway Administration because there was increasing interest in looking at the greenhouse gas emissions impacts of project. There are modeling tools available to estimate motor vehicle emissions. The current tool is the EPA's MOVES model. But at that point, there weren't any tools available to estimate emissions from building projects. There are a lot of potential sources of greenhouse gas emissions from projects. There are the embodied emissions in materials. In other words, the emissions that are generated when producing steel or cement or asphalt. There are emissions from construction equipment. There are emissions associated with land use changes. If you have to, if you have to cut down trees in order to build a new roadway, there are emissions associated with that because those trees can no longer sequester carbon from the atmosphere. There are emissions from lighting. Of course, there are emissions from vehicles that are using the infrastructure once it's built. And then finally, there are maintenance-related emissions, emissions associated with plowing snow or mowing the right-of-way. It would be difficult in the absence of a tool like this to estimate all of those emissions, not to mention really time-consuming. But MICE captures all of these sources of emissions in one easy-to-use tool. As I alluded to earlier, the MICE tool is based on FHWA's ICE tool, the Infrastructure Carbon Estimator. That first came out in 2014, and then it was recently updated. NCHRP is the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, which is part of the Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academy of Sciences. And they organized a multi-state effort to raise funds to update this tool. The MICE tool is based on the federal ICE tool, but it has Minnesota-specific vehicle emission rates. It has the ability to do build, no build analysis for projects, which the federal tool doesn't have. It has custom inputs for lighting, standard lane widths, land use, and the duration of lane closures during construction, and also output formats that are customized for Minnesota. And then finally, Minnesota-specific mitigation inputs. Both of these tools are based on real-world data. The Federal Highway Administration Highway Economic Requirement System is used to estimate the cost of infrastructure. And there are a lot of data behind that tool in terms of the construction requirements for different types of infrastructure. There's another system called bid tabs, which records the actual bid quantities for materials for actual projects all around the country. So that was a source of information for how much steel and how much concrete and how much asphalt and so on go into different types of projects. Another report produced by NCHRP is called the Fuel Factors Report. That report documents fuel consumption associated with different kinds of construction activities. Federal Highways Administration's National Bridge Inventory was a source of information for the materials needed to build bridges. And then finally, when it comes to maintenance activities, the fuel consumption is based on actual fuel records from state DOTs. So the actual information behind this tool is pretty robust, and it provides a good reflection of the amount of materials and activity that are associated with building different things. The ICE tool is also peer reviewed by an expert panel of Federal Highway Administration staff and actual practitioners at state DOTs and metropolitan planning organizations. So here's what MICE covers and doesn't cover. It covers the major infrastructure associated with the highway and transit systems, including bridges, bus rapid transit systems, culverts, light rail and heavy rail, lighting, parking, sidewalks and trails, roadways, of course, roadway resurfacing and reconstruction, signs, and then land use impacts. There's some smaller elements associated with projects that aren't included in the tool, mostly because there just aren't good data for them. The tool doesn't have the ability to model custom pavements, like rubberized asphalt and things like that. It doesn't include fences, guardrails, landscaping, noise walls, pavement overlay projects like chip seal projects, ramp metering, traffic signals, variable message signs, truck weigh stations and weigh in motion infrastructure. So there are some aspects of the transportation system that the tool still doesn't cover, but it covers the biggest sources of emissions. And again, if your project isn't included in this tool, then you're not required to do a greenhouse gas analysis under MnDOT's guidance. So here's a quick overview of the process, and we'll do an actual walkthrough of this in a few minutes. But the MICE tool is a spreadsheet. You open the spreadsheet, select the location and the project lifetime in years, operate the tool in planning mode. You select all the types of infrastructure that are associated with the project and vehicle operations if the project affects traffic volumes or traffic speeds. There's the ability to enter some comments to document the project, and those are listed here. Once you select the types of infrastructure that your project includes, the tool opens up additional tables below the comment boxes where you input the actual data about the project. For example, how many lane miles of pavement are associated with the project. There's a separate worksheet for mitigation. You can apply any applicable mitigation measures. And then finally, once you're done with all that, the tool has already calculated emissions and you can go view the results. This is the introductory screen of the tool. This is a macro-enabled spreadsheet, so that you can see the box at the top to enable content. You have to do that in order for the tool to work. The next worksheet is the project inputs worksheet, and I have several screenshots of this. So over on the right where the red arrow is, you can see that we've selected Minnesota, and this project has a 20-year lifetime. On the left, we've selected planning mode. There's no custom electricity profile, so the answer for that is just no. So this is all fairly straightforward. Down below that are the boxes where you can check what types of infrastructure are associated with the project, and they'll turn green when they're selected. I think when you download this from MnDOT's website, actually they're already pre-selected, so they would all be green. Down below those infrastructure buttons are the comment boxes where you can enter information about the project, and there's some placeholders already included in the tool. And then this is one example of the inputs. So if I selected roadways and then scrolled down in the spreadsheet, I would see tables that look like this. And all these inputs are designed to be fairly straightforward. You don't need to know how many cubic yards of concrete you're going to need. You don't need to know what the depth of the pavement is going to be. You don't need to know how wide the lanes are going to be and so on. All you really need are miles. Um, so for the roadway system, some of the calculations in this tool are based on the center line miles or how long the road is. Um, so you enter the existing center line miles and then any newly constructed centerline miles if you're lengthening a road, adding a few miles to it. And then down below are different types of projects under different functional classes. And you can select the type of project and enter the lane miles that are associated with it. And lane miles are the actual amount of pavement. So a 10-mile long road that's 4 lanes wide is 40 lane miles. Um, so you just enter any aspects of the project that apply. Obviously you don't need to fill out this entire table because no projects are going to include all of this. You just enter what applies. Um, the the ability to include roadway rehabilitation activities is disabled in the tool. Um, because MnDOT requires people that are reconstructing or repaving roads to calculate emissions from those as separate projects. And then finally, if applicable, you can enter the percent construction that's in rocky or mountainous terrain. So this is just one example, and there are inputs like this for all the different types of infrastructure that are associated with this tool. In terms of sources of data, this is designed to be usable with information that you know when you're in the environmental process. Typically you'll know how many lanes the road is going to be and how long it's going to be. You'll know, how big bridges are going to be, how many lanes and how long they're going to be, and so on. So this is not designed to require any special studies to generate information for this tool. You're not required to know things that you might not know until you actually get to the construction phase, like how much dirt you have to move. This is all designed to be usable with project design documents, standard practice for other projects and things like that. This is a screenshot of the mitigation worksheet. There are several different types of mitigation that you can apply in the tool. Some of them relate to alternative fuels for construction equipment, vegetation management and snow fencing and removal strategies, which affect maintenance emissions, in-place roadway recycling, warm mix asphalt, recycled paving materials, and so on. The on the yellow column on the left is BAU or business as usual deployment. That's what you already do. Planned deployment is any additional mitigation above and beyond standard practice that you plan to apply for the project. Two of these things are already filled in, the biodiesel at the top and the alternative snow removal strategies in the middle. Those are already populated because those are already MnDOT standard practice. You enter information as a percentage of possible deployment. So maybe you're not going to use recycled pavement on the entire project. You're only going to use it on half the project, right? So you would enter 50%. Some of the strategies are limited. For example, you can't get hybrid construction equipment for all types of construction equipment. And the tool will warn you about combinations that aren't valid within the tool. And again, the pavement preservation strategies on the mitigation page are grayed out because MnDOT requires separate analysis of these types of projects. Once you enter information, you can go to the summary results worksheet in the tool. The summary results page provides charts and tables. At the very top, you need to select your units. For most analyses, you'll look at total greenhouse gas emissions and either metric tons or US tons of CO2e, which is carbon dioxide equivalent. This is just an example of some of the graphs it can produce. And then here are what summary tables look like. You can get total greenhouse gas emissions by type of activity at the top. and then in more detail on a material basis on the left. And then finally on the upper right, greenhouse gas emissions by type of infrastructure. Um, the bars in the graphs represent unmitigated or baseline emissions, business as usual mitigation, and all mitigation, and these tables do as well. The usage totals in these tables represent the build scenario only. As I mentioned, this tool has the ability to do build, no build traffic analysis. The totals in these blue tables are for the build scenario only. To address that, we added 4 specific MnDOT specific output tables. The first one is the vehicle operations or vehicle traffic emissions for a project base year, design year no build, and design year build. And then the tool calculates the difference between no build and the cumulative difference over the project lifetime. And then finally, the project total. So these are the traffic related emissions. There's a separate table for emissions for construction delay, a table for emissions associated with land use changes, and then finally a table for emissions associated with roadway rehabilitation projects, which aren't included in the main ICE tables. So these tables are designed to work hand in hand with MnDOT's greenhouse gas guidance. And this slide illustrates how you take information from the MICE tool and plug it into the template tables in MnDOT's guidance. So it's all designed to be fairly seamless. Once you use this tool, you can populate the tables in the greenhouse gas guidance and your analysis is essentially done. So I'm going to walk through an example project. This is with the kind of the parameters of the project. So for this project, we're going to widen 3 miles of an urban principal arterial from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. Because we're widening the road, that also affects a lot of other things because the roadway footprint's getting bigger. We need to move the sidewalks over, so we need to build 6 new miles of replacement sidewalk. It's a 3-mile roadway with sidewalks on each side. 63 new traffic lights in the median. As part of this, we're replacing 5 small and 2 medium-sized culverts. Also replacing 12 small signs. For this project, there are no land use impacts because it's an urban area and the area is already fully developed. In terms of the effect on traffic, because we're widening the road, there'll be a slight increase in vehicle miles traveled because we're creating a more efficient route. Also, the speed will increase 10 miles an hour due to increased capacity on the road. And we're going to assume 14 months of construction delay. So let me stop sharing and pull up Excel. All right, can you see the spreadsheet all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is the opening screen for the mice tool. And this just provides some sort of basic background information about the tool. The next screen is, you can see the tabs down here along the bottom. The next screen is the project inputs tab, and this is where you actually enter data. Let me widen this a little bit. So on this screen, you can see that all of the different infrastructure types are selected. If I widen it just enough, you can see that I've got Minnesota selected as the location. The lifetime of the project is 20 years. And there's no custom electricity profile. Planning mode is selected. For this exercise, I'm not going to enter any comments. But as I scroll down below those comments, you can see these different tables for the different types of infrastructure. And since I've selected all the buttons up above, you're seeing all of the tables, even though some of these things don't apply to our project. So let me scroll back up and start to fill this in. So our project doesn't include any bridges, and it doesn't include bus rapid transit, but it does include culverts. And we have 2 medium culverts. So I enter 2, and we have 5 small culverts. So I enter 5. For a 6-lane roadway with some right-of-way on the side, these culverts are both going to be about 98 feet long. So I'm just entering 98 feet. So those are the inputs for culverts. We don't have any heavy rail. We don't have any light rail. We do have some lights. Under lighting, you enter the length of the roadway, which is 3 miles. And we have 63 lights, so that's an average of 21 lights per mile. And these are roadway luminaires in the median. So I'm going to enter 21. So that's our 63 lights. We don't have any parking. We do have to build 6 new miles of sidewalk. It's kind of confusing. The inputs for sidewalk are for either on street or off street. And on street doesn't mean they're literally on the street. It means that they're next to the street, like a standard urban sidewalk. We have 6 miles of that. We have no roadway rehabilitation as part of this project. But in terms of our, we actually are widening the road, so we need to enter something to explain that. It's a 3-mile long road, so we have 3 existing centerline miles. We're not lengthening the road. We're not making it longer, so we don't have any newly constructed centerline miles. And then down below, this is an urban principal arterial. The existing road is 3 miles and 4 lanes wide, so that's 12 lane miles. And we're constructing additional lanes, 1 lane in each direction for 3 miles. So that's 6 additional lane miles for constructing additional lanes. Just to quickly explain, the constructing additional lanes is when you're adding new lanes to a roadway. Lane widening is when you're not adding new lanes, you're just making the existing lanes wider. You're going from 10-foot lanes to 12-foot lanes or something like that. We don't have any land use impacts. None of the project's not in rocky or mountainous terrain. We do have signs. Again, it's a 3-mile road, and we are replacing 12 small signs, so that's 4 signs per mile. For vehicle operating emissions, these are the project traffic data. I went ahead and pre-typed this in so that you don't just have to sit and watch me type all these numbers. But the inputs are in terms of the base year and the design year. The average daily vehicle miles traveled on the project for the base year, we're assuming 84,000. For the design year under no build, we're assuming 105,000. And for build, we're assuming 111,000. That's because we're adding additional capacity to the roadway so more people can use it. The average speed currently is 35 miles per hour. If we don't widen the road, 20 years from now, it goes down to 27 miles per hour. And if we do widen the road, it goes up to 45 miles an hour. You know, these numbers typically come from either project traffic modeling or from the area's metropolitan planning organization. And then in terms of construction delay, this happens at the beginning of the project, of course, so the daily traffic is 84,000 vehicles per day. The pre-construction speed is 35 miles per hour. That's our, base year. During construction, we expect it to go down to 25 miles per hour. And then we expect construction to last 14 months. So those are the inputs associated with construction delay. And that's it. So now we've entered all the information about the project. And we can go to the Summary Results tab, which is the next tab. And here we can see I've selected total greenhouse gas emissions in metric tons of CO2. You need to make sure these boxes at the top, or at least the ones that are associated with your project, are green, or otherwise those emissions won't show up. So we have tables, or we have charts, and then we have our tables. So these are the blue tables that I showed you before, with emissions by type of activity and emissions by materials. And then over on the right, you can see the customized tables for the MICE tool, including the traffic impacts, construction and delay emissions, and there are no emissions for land use or roadway rehabilitation because we didn't enter anything for those. So that's basically it. It's fairly, once you have the information assembled, it's fairly straightforward to fill this out and complete the analysis. And while we're in here, I'll just show you what the mitigation screen looked like. And again, we have the, sorry, I'm scrolling kind of fast, but we have the different types of mitigation on the left, and then you can enter business as usual percentages and then percentages that you plan for your project. So that's it for the actual tool itself. Let me get back to the presentation and we'll just finish up. So here's everything we did for our project. So that'll be available in the slides for you. In terms of resources that are available, here's a link again to MnDOT's greenhouse gas guidance. For those of you who work in this field, MnDOT has the HPDP, the Highway Project Development Process, and that's currently being updated to a new Transportation Project Development Process. The scope of MnDOT's guidance will change the same, but there may be some formatting and other kinds of non-substantive changes. Here's a link to the MICE tool and the user guide. And then if you're interested in the federal version of the tool, the ICE tool, here's a link to that. And these are your contacts with MnDOT, Pete, and then for the Metro District, Natalie. And with that, we're ready for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I am going to share a screen now to show everybody how to raise your hand in WebEx if you are not familiar. So you should be able to look at the bottom of your screen and see a little hand icon. So if you click on that icon, I think your hand will raise, and if you click it a second time, it will lower your hand. And you can also access this through finding your name in the participants list and raising your hand there. So I'll leave this up for a couple of seconds so that you can get oriented if you have a question. Great. So we'll open it up for any questions.
Nobody has raised their hand yet, but there is a question in the, well, yeah, there's a question in the chat from Jesse saying, super helpful tool. I'd love to hear about any ongoing research to better understand, estimate, and ultimately incorporate the laundry list of things that are not yet quantifiable and therefore not required for reporting by the tool. Is that already in the works?
Well, a lot of the things that aren't included in the tool have fairly low emissions. Even some of the things that are included in the tool have really low emissions, like signage. If you think about a stop sign, it just doesn't take that much energy to build and install a stop sign. Some of the other projects, there's some research underway in California because Caltrans, the California Department of Transportation, is kind of interested in expanding the scope of this tool. The other area where we, would kind of prioritize research is in the pavements area. Um, Chip seal projects are fairly common, especially on rural roadways, where, you basically lay down a layer of tar and then lay down a layer of small gravel on top of that, right? Those are chip seal projects. There are a lot of those types of projects, so that would be something useful to incorporate in the tool in the future.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? I know that was a lot of really good information.
No other hands raised, but there's another question in the chat. Any guess when the new HPDP CPDP will be available? And if we search for HPDP, will there be any connection to the new CPDP? That was hard for me to read. Thank you.
Pete?
Yeah, the quick answer is the new TPDP is live. So if you do go to our old HPDP and find that, there is a link to the new website that is live now.
Don't see any hands raised. Any other chat questions, Marty?
I have a question.
Oh.
No, Jeff and Pete, how is this tool accessible to everyone, and especially to local units of government to use on their highway projects that they evaluate? And if so, who might be the best person should they try out the tool and have questions?
Yes, it is actually available for anyone's use. It's freely available on our web site for it. And then predominantly, I would be the main contact for it. We are going to do, with working with Jeff, probably a pre-recorded training on it. And haven't done that as of yet, but look for that coming out probably within the next month.
Great, and it looks like we do have a hand raised here. Carol Andrews, you should be able to ask your question.
Hi, yeah, this is Carol Andrews, St. Louis County. I was curious if, and maybe this is under mitigation measures, but if the tool accounts for how well a design provides storage for snow. We've had a really snowy year up here, and I see we end up with a lot of trucks and equipment picking up snow and hauling it away from sidewalks and things like that. And I always look at that and think, that's a lot of energy. I was just curious if the tool considers that. And it kind of relates, it came to mind when you talked about the sidewalk being on our standard urban. Well, having a wide boulevard is the best way to avoid having to move snow. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, the tool doesn't sort of calculate just general hauling, right? It does account for the emissions associated with snow plowing, but not for hauling snow around or hauling anything else around for that matter. It's included, for road construction, the truck emissions associated with transporting materials and moving dirt and so on are included in the roadway estimates, but there's no standalone thing to sort of estimate the emissions from moving snow to a storage area or moving snow around a storage area for that matter. Yeah, I know what you mean though. I have a huge snow storage area right behind my house.
Any other questions? Don't see any other hands raised. Marty, do we have anything in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat.
Well, oh, here we go. We have one. Maddie, you should be ready to ask your question.
With KLJ. Two questions actually on the tool itself. The first question is, what is custom pavement?
Custom pavement is a feature that's not active yet.
Okay.
When Federal Highway Administration developed this tool, the idea was that, you know, if states are using customized kind of non-standard pavements, that they would be able to model those in place of regular pavement. And those, you know, you've probably heard of things like rubberized asphalt, where the asphalt includes ground up tires, or using fly ash from power plants as a component of concrete, you know, things like that. You know, there are also, you know, there's research into future types of pavements with, you know, that include things like polymers to make them last longer. So the function is available in the tool, but we don't have the emissions data to populate it yet. So it's not usable. So that's what that is.
Okay, great. And then my second question is, the user guide says that the planning, the tool use planning is recommended. So should we just do that most of the time instead of the project mode?
Yeah, the difference between planning and project mode is that in project mode, you can only model one thing. You know, our example project included roadways, sidewalks, lights, culverts, right? In planning mode, you can analyze all those aspects at once. If you use the tool in project mode, you know, you can only open one thing. So you would have to use one version of the spreadsheet for the road, and then open up another version of the spreadsheet and use that for the sidewalks, and then open another version of the spreadsheet and use that for the lights, you know, and so on. So it's a lot more cumbersome. That's why we recommend planning mode.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Any last questions from Denise?
Well, I think this is extremely helpful. So if there aren't any other questions, I think it would be okay to go ahead and convene and then, or to conclude, and then we'll be opening up the cohort meeting at 11.
Sounds good. So thank you, everyone. Just wrapping up. Thank you for your participation today. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to send me an email. I think Marty has put my email address into the chat. And if you are a cohort participant, you should have received a separate link for the 11 o'clock meeting. And I hope to see you over there, and I hope to see you next month for our next presentation. Thank you, everyone.